Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me and everyone in this continuous reading of the very special sacred text called Vishuddhimagga. So let's take a couple of moments to settle ourselves in cultivating the right intention, attention, in listening and reflecting on this meaning so that we can retain some of the teachings that are poignant to apply in our lives in the best possible way to relieve ourselves from unskillful thinking and learning to adhere to the Dharma, how it shows a way to resolve them as the medicine. Vishuddhimagga, path of purification, is that how do you, there's really we are already doing lots of purification in the garden, in the home, in the carpet, and house, clothes. Oh, we're really disciplined there. But only if we were just as disciplined to purify the mind, that would be good. We should have a cleaning company that comes every day to our mind. That would be good. But unfortunately, Buddha said you have to do it yourself. So that's why we have to do this. Thank you for everyone. Let's do the prayers, refuge in the Triple Gem, and the generation of bodhicitta, and the Four Immeasurables. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aire Pyeje Lajama Bhavachu Ayenda Ashare Buddha Tuve Endabu Dada Sangha Aitere Vire Lajam Bhavachu Ayenda Ashare Buddha Tuve Endabu Dharma Sangha Aitere Vire Lajam Bhavachu Ayenda Ashare Buddha Tuve. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those never. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those never. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, those never. Go intelligence and predisposition of it. The Dharma agrelo and come goes. So we are on chapter 21, page 782. This probably will be our last reading, so even though we might take a little bit longer than normal nights, but we will finish tonight. Thank you for your patience and endurance. Ninth is the confirmative knowledge. As he repeats, develops and cultivates that equanimity about formation, his faith becomes more resolute, his energy better is exerted, his mindfulness better established, his mind better concentrated, while his equanimity about formation grows more refined. He thinks now the path will arise, equanimity about formation after comprehending formation as impermanent, or as painful, or as not self, sinks into life continuum. Next to the life continuum, mind or adverting arises, making formations its object as impermanent or as painful or as not self, according to the way taken by equanimity about formations. Then next to the functional adverting consciousness that arises displacing the life continuum, the first impulsion consciousness arises, making formation its object in the same way, maintaining the continuity of consciousness. This is called preliminary work. Next to the second impulsion consciousness arises, making formation its object in the same way. This is called access. Next to that, the third impulsion consciousness also arises, making formation its object in the same way. This is called conformity. These are their individual names, but it is admissible to call them three impulsions: repetition, preliminary work, or access, or conformity indiscriminately. Conformity to what? To what precedes and to what follows, for it conforms to the functions of truth both in the 8 preceding kinds of insight knowledge and in the 37 states partaking of enlightenment that follows. Since its occurrence is contingent upon formation through comprehending the characteristic of impermanence, etc., it, so to speak, says the knowledge is knowledge of rise and fall indeed, so the rise and fall of precisely these states that possess rise and fall, and contemplation of dissolution indeed, so the dissolution of precisely those states that possess dissolution, and it was indeed precisely what was terrible that appeared as terror to knowledge of appearance, terror and contemplation of danger indeed, so danger in precisely what was dangerous, and knowledge of dispassion indeed became dispassionate towards precisely that which should be regarded as a dispassion, and knowledge for desire for deliverance indeed produced desire for deliverance from precisely that where there should be deliverance from, and what was reflected upon by knowledge of reflection was indeed precisely what should be reflected upon, and what was looked on at with equanimity by equanimity about formation was indeed precisely what should be looked on it at with equanimity. So it confirms true function of truth, both in the 8 kinds of knowledge and the 37 states partaking of enlightenment, which follow because they are to be reached by entering upon it. Just as the righteous king who sits in the place of judgment, hearing the pronouncement of the judges, while excluding bias and remaining impartial, confirms both to their pronouncement and to the ancient royal custom by saying, so be it, so it is here too. Conformity is like the king. The 8 kinds of knowledge are like the 8 judges. The 37 states partaking of enlightenment are like the ancient royal custom. Here, just as the king confirms by saying, so be it, both to the judge's pronouncement and the royal custom, so this conformity which arises contingent upon formation through comprehending impermanent, etc., confirms the function of truth, both in the 8 kinds of knowledge and in 37 states partaking of enlightenment that follows. Here it is called knowledge in conformity with truth. The knowledge of conformities is ended. Though this conformity knowledge is end of insight leading to emergence that has confirmation as its object, still change of lineage, knowledge is the last of all kinds of insight leading to emergence. A sutra reference. Now the following sutra reference should be understood in order to not to be confused about insight leading to emergence. For this insight leading to emergence is called aloofness. Attayamayata in the Salayatana Vivanga Sutta. Thus Vikshu, by depending on and relying on aloofness, abandon, surmount equanimity that is unified, based on unity. In the Alagata Sutra it is called dispassion. Thus being dispassionate, his greed fades away. With that fading away of greed, he is liberated. In the Susima Sutta it's called knowledge of the relationship of states. Thus, previously, Susima, there is knowledge of relationship of states. Subsequently, there is knowledge of Nibbana. In the Potthanapada Sutra, it is called the culmination of perception. Thus, first Potthapada, the culmination of perception arises, and afterwards knowledge. It is thus Suttara Sutra. It is called the principal factor of purity. Thus, purification of knowledge and vision of the way is the principal purity factor of purity. In the Patisambhida Lambamagga, it is called by the three names. Thus, desire for deliverance and contemplation of reflection and equanimity about formation. These things are one in meaning and only in letter is different. In the Patthana, it is called the two names, thus conformity to change of lineage and conformity to cleansing. In the Ratha Vinitta Sutra, it is called purification, knowledge, and vision of the way. Thus, but how, friend, it is for the purpose of purification, knowledge, and vision of way that the life of purity is lived under Blessed One. The great sage did thus proclaim, this insight stilled and purified, that to emergence leads beside, with many a neatly chosen name, the round of rebirth, slough of pain, is vast and terrible. A man wisely should strive as best he can if he would this emergence gain. The 21st chapter, called the description of the purification by knowledge and vision of the way, in the treatise on the development of understanding the path of purification, composed for the purpose of gladdening people, good people. That's end of chapter 21. Chapter 22, the description of purification by knowledge and vision. Change of lineage and the four paths and four fruitions. Change of lineage knowledge comes next. Its position is to advert to the path, and it belongs neither purification by knowledge and vision of the way, nor purification by knowledge and vision, but by intermediate. It is unassignable. Still, it is reckoned as insight because it falls in line with insight. Purification, knowledge, and vision properly consist of the knowledge of the four paths. That is the way, that is to say, the path of stream entry, path of one's returner, path of non-returner, and the path of arhatship. Change of lineage knowledge and knowledge of the first path. Herein, nothing further needs to be done by one who wants to achieve, firstly, the knowledge of the first path. For that he needs to do has already been done by arousing insight that ends in conformity knowledge. As soon as conformity knowledge has arisen in him in this way, and thick murk that hides the truth has been dispelled by the respective pores peculiar to each of the three kinds of conformity, then his consciousness no longer enters into or settles down on or resolves upon any field of formation at all, or cleaves, or clutches and onto it, but retreats, retracts, and recoils as water does from lotus leaf, and every sign or as object, every occurrence as object appears as an impediment. Then, while every sign and occurrence appears to him as an impediment, when conformity knowledge's repetition has ended, a change of lineage knowledge arises in him, which takes as its object the signless, non-occurrence, non-formation, a cessation, nibbana, which knowledge passes out the lineage, the category, the plane of the ordinary man, and enters the lineage, the category, the plane of the noble ones, which, being the first adverting, the first concern, the first reaction to Nibbana as object, fulfills the states of condition for the path in 6 ways, as proximity, contiguity, repetition, decisive support, absence, and disappearance conditions, which is the culminating peak of insight, which is irrevocable, of which it is said, how is it that understanding emergence and turning away from the external is change of lineage knowledge? It overcomes arising, thus it is change of lineage. It overcomes occurrence, the sign of accumulation, rebirth, linking, destiny, generation, arising, birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation. It overcomes despair, thus it is change of lineage. It overcomes the sign of formation externally, thus it is change of lineage. It enters into non-arising, thus it is change of lineage. It enters into non-occurrence, thus it is change of lineage, etc. It enters into non-despair, thus it is change of lineage. It enters into cessation, nibbana, thus it is change of lineage. Having overcome arising, it enters into non-arising, as it is change of lineage, and so on, all of which should be quoted. Here is a simile that illustrates how conformity and change of lineage occur with different objects, though occurring in a single cognitive series with a single adverting. Suppose a man wanted to leap across a broad stream and establish himself on the opposite bank. He should run fast and, seizing the rope fastened to the branch of the tree on the stream's near bank and hanging down on a pole, would leap with his body tending, inclining, and leaning towards the opposite bank, and when he had arrived above the opposite bank, he would let go, fall on the opposite bank, staggering first, and then steady himself there. So too, this meditator who wants to establish himself on Nibbana, the bank opposite to the kinds of becoming, generation, destiny, station, abode, runs fast by means of contemplation, rise and fall, etc., and seizing the conformities adverting to impermanence, pain, and not self, the rope of materiality fastened to the branch of his life, of his selfhood, and hanging down, or one among the poles, beginning with feeling, he leaps with the first conformity consciousness without letting go, and with the second he tends, inclines, and leans toward Nibbana, like the body that was tending, inclining, and leaning towards opposite bank. Then, being with the third next to Nibbana, which is now attainable like the others arriving above the opposite bank, he let go that formation as object with a seizing of that consciousness, and with the change of lineage consciousness he falls onto the unformed Nibbana, the bank opposite, but staggering as the man did for lack of previous repetition, he is not yet properly steady on the single object. After that, he is steadied by path knowledge. Herein, conformity is able to dispel the murk of defilements that conceal the truth, but it is unable to make Nibbana its object. Change of lineage is only able to make Nibbana its object. It is unable to dispel the murk that conceals the truth. Here is a simile. These similes are very useful, isn't it? Here is a simile. A man with eyes went out at night, it seems, to find out the conjunction of the stars, and he looked up to see the moon. It was invisible because it was concealed by clouds. Then a wind sprang up and blew away the thick clouds, another blew away the medium clouds, and another blew away the fine clouds as well. Then the man saw the moon in the free sky from doubts, and he found out the conjunction of the stars. Herein, the thick, medium, and the fine kinds of darkness that conceal the truth are like the three kinds of cloud. The three kinds of conformity consciousness are like three winds. Change of lineage knowledge is like the man with eyes. Nibbana is like the moon. Dispelling of the murk that conceals the truth by each kind of conformity consciousness is like successive blowing away the clouds by each wind. Change of lineage knowledge is seeing the clear Nibbana when the murk that conceal the truth has disappeared, is like man seeing the clear moon in the sky free from cloud. Just as the three winds are able only to blow away the clouds that conceal the moon but cannot see the moon, so the three kinds of conformity are able only to dispel the murk that conceal the truth but not see Nibbana. Just as the man only can see the moon that cannot blow away the clouds, so change of lineage knowledge can only see Nibbana but cannot dispel the defilements. Here it is called averting to the path. For although it is not averting, it occupies occupies the position of adverting, and then after, as it were, giving a sign to the path of to come into being, it ceases. And without pausing there after the sign given by that change of lineage, knowledge of the path follows upon it in uninterrupted continuity, and it comes into being. It pierces and explodes the mass of greed, mass of hatred, mass of delusion, never pierced and exploded before. Here is a simile for this. An archer, it seems, had a target set up at a distance 8 usabas, about 100 yards, and wrapping his face in a cloth and arming himself with an arrow, he stood on a wheel contrivances of a revolving platform. Another man turned the wheel contrivance, and when the target was opposite the archer, he gave him a sign with a stick. Without pausing after the sign, the archer shot the arrow and hit the target. Herein, the change of lineage knowledge is like sign with the stick. Path knowledge is like the archer. Path knowledge is making nibbana its object without pausing after the sign given by change of lineage, and it's piercing the exploding the mass of greed, hate, and delusion never pierced and exploded before is like the archers hitting the target without pausing after the sign. And not only does this it cause the piercing of the mass of greed, etc., but it also dries up the ocean of suffering of the round of the beginnerless round of rebirth. It closes all doors to the states of loss. It provides actual experience of 7 noble treasures. It abandons the eightfold wrong path. It allays all enmity and fear. It leads to the state of fully enlightened one's breast-born son. And it leads to acquisition of many hundred other blessings. So it is knowledge associated with the path of stream entry and provider of 100 blessings, and is called knowledge of the path of stream entry. The first kind of knowledge is ended. The first fruition, second noble person. Immediately next to that knowledge, however, there arise either 2 or 3 fruition consciousness where it arises a result. For it is owing to this very fact that supermundane profitable consciousness results immediately that it is called, and which is called concentration with immediate result, and sluggishly he reaches what has immediate result for the destruction of the cankers, and so on. Some, however, say that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 fruition consciousness. That is unadmissible. For change of lineage knowledge arises at the end of conformity repetition. So at the minimum, there must be two conformity consciousness, since one alone does not act as a repetition condition. And a single series of impulsions has a maximum of 7 impulsion consciousness. Consequently, that series which has 2 conformities and change of lineage as third, and path consciousness as fourth, has 3 fruition consciousness. That which has 3 conformities and change of knowledge as fourth, and path consciousness the fifth, has 2 fruition consciousness. That is why it was said there are either 2 or 3 fruition consciousness. Then some say that that which has 4 conformities and change of lineage as fifth, and path consciousness sixth, has 1 fruition consciousness. But that is refuted, because it is the fourth and fifth impulsion that reaches the path, not these after that, owing to their nearness to the life continuum. So that cannot be accepted as correct. And at this point, the stream entry is called second noble person. However negligent he may be, he is bound to make an end of suffering, where he has traveled and traversed the round of rebirths among deities and human beings for the seventh time. At the end of the fruition, his consciousness consciousness enter the life continuum. After that, it arises as a mind door, adverting at interrupting the life continuum for the purpose of reviewing the path. When that has ceased, 7 impulsions of the path reviewing there, after re-entry into the life continuum, adverting, etc., they arise in the same way for the purpose of reviewing fruition and so on. With the arising of these, he reviews the path, he reviews the fruition, he reviews the defilements abandoned, he reviews defilements still remaining, and he reviews nibbana. He reviews the path in this way. So this is the path I have come by. Next he reviews the fruition after that, that in this way. This is the blessing I have obtained. Next he reviews the defilement that have been abandoned. These are the defilements abandoned in me. Next he reviews the defilements still to be eliminated by the 3 higher paths. These are defilements still remaining in me. Next, and lastly he reviews the deathless nibbana in this way. This is the state Dhamma that has been penetrated by me as object. So the whole noble disciple who is a stream entry have 5 kinds of reviewing. And as in the case of the stream enterer, also in the stream case of one's returner and non-returner, but the Arhat has no review of remaining defilements. So all the kinds of reviewing total 19. This is the maximum number. Trainers may or may not have reviewing of the defilements abandoned and those still remaining. In fact, it was owing to the absence of such reviewing of the Mahanama, asked Buddha, Blessed One, what state is there still abandoned by me, internally owing to which at times states of greed invade my mind will remain, all of which should be quoted. Knowledge of the second path, the third noble person. However, after reviewing this way, either while sitting in the same session or another occasion, the noble disciple who is a stream enterer makes his task to reach the second plane by attenuating both greed for sense desire and ill will. He brings to bear the faculties, the powers, and the enlightened factors, and he works over and turns up that same field of formation, classes materiality, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness, with the knowledge they are impermanent, painful, not self, and he embarks upon the progressive series of insight. When he has done so, when at the end of equanimity about formation, conformity with change of knowledge, change of lineage, knowledge have arisen in a single adverting in the same way already described, then the path of one's returner arises next to change of lineage. The knowledge of associate with that is the path of knowledge of the path of one's returner. Second kind of knowledge is ended. In second fruition, the fourth noble person, the fruition consciousness should be understood as follows, and immediately upon his knowledge of the same way as before. And at this point, one's returner is called fourth noble person. He is bound to make an end of suffering after returning once to this world. Next there comes reviewing in the way already described. Knowledge of the third path, fifth noble person. After having reviewing in this way, either while sitting in the same session or another occasion, this noble disciple who is one's returner make his task to reach the third plane by abandoning without remainder, without greed for sense desires and ill will. He brings to bear the faculties, powers, and enlightenment factors, and he works over and turns up that same field of formation with the knowledge that they are impermanent, painful, not self, and he embarks upon the progressive series of insight. When he has done so, and when at the end of equanimity about formation, conformity, and change of lineage have arisen in a single adverting in the way already described, then the path of one non-returner arises next to the change of lineage, the knowledge associated with the knowledge of the path of the non-returner. Third kind of knowledge is ended. The third fruition, the sixth noble person. The fruition consciousness should be understood as follows: immediately upon his knowledge, in the same way as before, and the point of at this point, this non-returner is called sixth noble person. After death, he reappears apparitionally elsewhere and attains complete extinction there without ever returning, without ever coming to this world again through rebirth linking. Next, there comes the reviewing of, in the way already described, knowledge of the fourth path, seventh noble person. Now, after reviewing this way, either while sitting in the same session or another occasion, this noble disciple who is non-returner makes in his task to reach the fourth plane by abandoning, without remainder, greed for the material or immaterial, conceit, pride, agitation, and ignorance. He brings to bear the faculties, powers, and the enlightenment factors, and he works over and turns up that same field of formation like the knowledge that they are impermanent, painful, and no self, and he embarks upon the progressive series of insight. When he has done so, and when he at the end of equanimity about formation, conformity, and change of lineage have arisen in the single everything, then the path of arhatship arises next to the change of lineage. The knowledge associated with that is knowledge of the path of arhatship. The fourth kind of knowledge is ended. The fourth fruition, eighth noble person. The fruition consciousness should be understood to follow immediately upon this knowledge in the same way as before. And at this point, this arhat is called eighth noble person. He is the one of the great ones with cankers destroyed. He bears his last body. He has laid down the burden, reached his goal, and destroyed the fetters of becoming. He is rightly liberated with the final knowledge, the worthy of highest offerings of the world with its deity. So when it was said above, however, purification by knowledge and vision properly consists in knowledge of the four paths, that is to say, path of stream entry, path of one's returner, path of non-returner, and path of arhatship, and that refer to these four kinds of knowledge to be reached in this order. 2. The states associated with the path, etc. Now, in order to appreciate the value of the same purification of knowledge and vision with its four kinds of knowledge: 1. Purification of states sharing in enlightenment. 2. Emergence. And 3. The coupling of powers. 4. The kinds of states that ought to be abandoned. 5. Also the act of their abandoning. 6. The function of full understanding, and the rest, as stated when part truths are penetrated true. 7. Each one of which ought to be recognized according to its individual essence. First, herein the fulfillment of states sharing enlightenment is the fulfilledness of those states partaking in enlightenment. For they are the following 37 states: 4 for Foundation Mindfulness Sutra, 4 right effort, 4 right endeavors, 4 roads to power, 5 faculties, 5 powers, the 7 enlightenment factors, and 8 noble path. And they are called the partaking of enlightenment because they take the part of the noble eightfold path that is called enlightenment, in the sense of enlightening, and then they take the part of that because they are helpful. Foundation, but Thana, is because of enlightenment, because of an establishment by going down by descending upon such and such object. Mindfulness itself is foundation, is the foundation of mindfulness. It is 4 kinds because it occurs with respect to body, feeling, consciousness, and mental object, taking them as foul, painful, impermanent, and not self. And because it accomplishes the function of abandoning a perception of beauty, pleasure, permanence, as self, that is why for foundation mindfulness said. by it they endeavor, thus it is endeavor, a good endeavor is right endeavor, or alternatively by its means people endeavor rightly, thus it is right endeavor, or alternatively it is good because it's abandoning the unseemliness of defilements, and it is endeavor because it's bringing about improvement and giving a precedence in the sense of producing well-being and bliss. Thus, it is right endeavor. It is named for energy. It accomplished the function of abandoning arises unprofitable things, preventing the arising of those that are not yet arisen, arousing unrisen profitable things, and maintaining those already arisen. Thus, it is fourfold. That is why four right endeavors is said. Power is in the sense success, as already described. It is the road to the power, is for that success, iti, in the sense of being the precursor of that success which is associated with it, and in the sense of being the prior cause of that success which is its fruit. Thus it is road to power, basis of success. It is fourfold, as zeal, desire, and so on. That is why four roads to power are spoken of according to it is said four roads to power. The road to power is consisting of real, roads to power consisting of energy, roads to power consisting in natural purity of consciousness, the road to power consisting in purity these are supermundane. These are supermundane only. But because of the words, if a bhikshu obtains concentration, obtains mental purification by making zeal predominant, and that is called concentration through zeal, etc., they are also mundane as states acquired by predominance of zeal, etc., respectively. Faculty is in the sense of predominance, in other words, of overcoming, because these states or faculties respectively overcome faithlessness, idleness, negligence, distraction, and confusion. Power in the sense of unwaveringness, because these states as powers are incapable of being overcome respectively by faithlessness and so on. Both are fivefold as consisting of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and understanding. That is why five faculties and five powers is said. Mindfulness, investigation of states, energy, happiness, tranquility, concentration, equanimity as factors in being who is becoming enlightened are the seven enlightened factors, and right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration are the eight path factors in the sense of being an outlet. Hence, the seven enlightenment factors and eightfold noble eightfold path, it is said. So there are these 37 states partaking enlightenment. Now, in the prior stage, when mundane insight is occurring, they are found in a plurality of consciousness to follow. The foundation mindfulness consisting of contemplation of the body is found in one discerning the body in 14 ways. Foundation mindfulness consisting of contemplation feeling in one, discerning feeling in 9 ways. Foundation mindfulness consisting contemplation mind in one, discerning the manner of consciousness in 16 ways. Foundation mindfulness consisting in contemplation of mental object in one, discerning mental object as 5 ways. And at the time when one seeing the unprofitable states arise in someone else which has not yet been arisen in this own person, he strives for its non-arising. Thus I shall not behave as he has done in whom this is not arisen, and so this will not arise in me. Then he has the first right endeavor. When seeing something unprofitable in his own behavior, he strives to abandon it, and he has the second. When he strives to arouse jhana or insight, so far unarisen in his person, he has the third. And when he arouses again and again in what has already arisen, so that he shall not diminish, he has the fourth. And at the time of arousing unprofitable states, that is with zeal as the motive force, there is a road to power consisting in zeal, and so on, which with the remaining three roads to power. And at the time of abstaining from wrong speech, there is right speech, and on abstaining from wrong actions and wrong livelihood. And at the time arising of any one of these four kinds of path, knowledge, then these states are found in single consciousness. In the moment of fruition, 33 accepting the four right endeavors are found. When these are found in the single consciousness in this way, it is the one kind of mindfulness whose object is Nibbana that is called four foundational mindfulness, because it accomplished the function of abandoning the four perceptions of beauty, etc., and the four things beginning with the body. And also the one kind of energy is called right endeavor, because it accomplished the four functions of beginning with preventing the arising of unarisen, unprofitable, but there is no decrease or increase with the rest. Furthermore, it is said of them, 9 in a way, 1 in a 2 ways, then in 4 ways, and in 5 ways, in 8 ways, and in 9 ways too, so too in 6 ways they come to be. 9 in a way, 1 way. These 9 are zeal, consciousness, happiness, tranquility, equanimity, thinking, speech, action, and livelihood. And they are found in 1 way as road to power consisting in zeal, etc., since they do not belong to another group. 1 in 2 ways, faith found in 2 ways as faculty and as a power. 3, then in 4 ways, and 4 in 5 ways, meaning that another one is found in 4 ways and another one in 5. Here in concentration is the one in 4 ways, and since it is the faculty, power, an enlightened factor, and a path factor, understanding is 1 in 5 ways, and since it is this 4 and also road to power, 5 the 8 ways. In 8 ways and 6 in 9 ways too, the meaning is that another one is found in 8 ways, another in 9 ways. Mindful is the one in 8 ways, since it is the four founded mindfulness, faculty, power, enlightenment factor, and path and a path factor. Energy is the one in 9 ways, since it is 4 right endeavors, a road to power, a faculty, power, an enlightenment factor, and path factor. So, state sharing in enlightenment are 14, undistributed. They total 37 states among the groups distributed. While each performs the proper task that to its special lot falls due, they all come into being when the Noble Eightfold Path comes true. This is how the full fulfillment of states partaking in enlightenment should be understood here. 2. Emergence, and in 3, coupling with the power and resolution of the compound Vuttana Balasamaya Voga is Uttivanana Pacha Bala Samayoga. 2. Emergence. Mundane insight induces no emergence, either from occurrence of defilements internally, because it does not cut off originating, which is the act of causing occurrence, or from the sign of formation externally, because it has the sign as object. Change of lineage knowledge does not induce emergence from occurrence internally, because it does not cut off originating, but it does induce emergence from the sign externally, because it has Nibbana as object. So there is is emergence from one. Hence, it is said, understanding of emergence and turning away from external is knowledge of change of lineage. Likewise, the whole passage, having turned away from existing, it enters into non-arising. That is this change of lineage. Having turned away from the currents, etc., for illusion, see, having turned away from the sign of formation externally, it enters into formation nibbana. Thus, it is change of lineage. It should be understood here. These four kinds of path knowledge emerges from the sign of sun because they have the signless as the object, and also from occurrence because they cut of origination, so they emerge from both. Hence, it is said here, how is it that understanding of emergence and turning away from both is knowledge of the path? At the moment of the stream entry path, the right view is the sense of seeing. A emerges from the wrong view and emerges from defilements and from the aggregates that occur consequent upon that wrong view, and externally it emerges from all signs. Hence it was said, understanding of emergence and turning away from both is knowledge of path. Right thinking is the sense of directing emergence from wrong thinking. Right speech is the sense of embracing emerges from wrong speech. Right action is sense of originating emergence from wrong action. Right livelihood is the sense of cleansing emergence from the wrong livelihood. Right effort is the same, is the sense of exerting emergence from wrong effort. Right mindfulness, right concentration in the sense of non-distraction emergence from wrong concentration, and emergence from defilements and from the aggregates that occur consequent upon that wrong concentration, and externally it emerges from all signs. Hence it was said, concentration of emergence and turning away from both is knowledge of the path. At the moment of the one's returner path, right view is the sense of seeing. Right concentration is the sense of non-distracting. A emerges from the gross fetter of greed or sense desires, from the gross fetter of resentment, from the gross inherent tendency to greed for the sense desires, and from this gross inherent tendency to resentment, and emerges from the defilements and from the aggregate consequent upon that, and externally it emerges from all signs. Hence it was said, understanding of emergence and turning away from both is knowledge of the path. At the moment of the non-returner path, the right view is sense of seeing. Right concentration in the sense of non-distractions emerges from the residual fetter of greed and sense desire, from the residual fetter of resentment, from the residual inherent tendency to greed, sense desires, from the residual inherent tendency to resentment, and it emerges from the defilements and from the aggregates, and occur the consequences upon that, and externally emerges from all signs. Hence it is called understanding of emergence, and turning away from both is knowledge of the path. At the moment of the Arhat path, right view is the sense of seeing. Right concentration is the sense of non-distraction, emerges from greed for the five fine material existence, from greed for immaterial existence, from conceit, pride, from agitation, from ignorance, from inherent tendency to conceit, pride, from the inherent tendency to greed for becoming, from the inherent tendency to ignorance, and its emergence from defilements, and from the aggregates that occur consequent upon that, and externally it emerges from all signs. Hence it is said, the understanding of the emergence and turning away from both is knowledge of path. Three, coupling with the powers. At the time of developing the 8 mundane attainments, the serenity power is in excess, while at the time of developing the contemplation of impermanence, etc., insight power is in excess. But at the noble path moment, they are coupled together in the sense that neither one exceeds the other. So there is a coupling of the powers in the case of each one of the 4 kinds of knowledges, according as it is said. When he emerges from the defilements associated with agitation and from aggregates, his mental Mental unification, non-distraction, concentration has cessation as its domain. When he emerges from the defilements associated with ignorance and from the emerge aggregates, his insight is, in the sense of contemplation, has cessation of as its domain. So, serenity and insight have a single nature in the sense of emergence. They are coupled together and neither exceeds the other. Hence, it was said he developed serenity and insight coupled together in the sense of emergence. The emergence and coupling with the power should be understood here in this way. 4. The kinds of states that ought to be abandoned. 5. Also the act of this abandoning. Now which states are to be abandoned by which kind of knowledge among the 4 should be understood, and also act of abandoning them. For they each and severally bring about the abandoning of the states called fetters, defilements, wrongness, worldly states, kind of avarice, perversion, ties, bad ways, cankers, floods, bonds, hindrances, adherences, clingings, inherent tendencies, stains, unprofitable course of action, and unprofitable thought arisings. Herein, the fetters are the 10 states, beginning with greed, and for the fine material so called because they fetter aggregates in this life to aggregates of the next, or karma to its fruit, and beings to suffering. For as long as the one exists, there is no cessation of the other. And of the fetters, greed for the fine material, greed for the immaterial, conceit, pride, agitation, ignorance are called 5 higher fetters, because they fetter beings to aggregates and etc. produce in the higher forms of becoming, while false view of individuality, uncertainty, adherence to rites and rituals, greed to sense desires, resentment are called 5 lower fetters, because they fetter beings to aggregate, etc., produce in the lower forms of becoming. The defilements are 10 states, namely greed, hate, delusion, conceit, pride, false view, uncertainty, stiffness of mind, agitation, consciencelessness, shamelessness. They are so called because they are themselves filled, they are defiled, and because they defile the states associated with them. The wrongness are 8 states, namely wrong view, wrong thinking, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration, which with the wrong knowledge and wrong deliverance come to 10. They are so called because they occur wrongly. The worldly states are 8, namely gain, worldly states, 8, worldly dharma, what we usually say. The 8, namely gain, loss, fame, disgrace, pleasure, pain, blame, and praise. They are so called because they continually succeed each other for so long as the world persists. But when the worldly states are included, then by the metaphorical use of the cause's name for its fruit, the approval that has gain, etc., as its object, and the resentment that has the loss, etc., as its object, should also be understood as included. As the kinds of avarice are 5, namely avarice about dwellings, families, gain, dharma, and praise, which occur as inability to bear sharing with others any of those things beginning with the dwellings. Perversions are 3, namely perversion of perception of consciousness and of view, which occur apprehending objects that are impermanent, painful, not self, and foul as permanent, pleasant, self, and beautiful. The ties are 4 beginning with covetousness, so called because they tie the mental body and the material body. They are described as the bodily tie of conscious covetousness, bodily tie of ill will, the bodily tie of adherence to rites and rituals, and the bodily tie of insisting and misinterpreting that this only is the truth. Bad ways is a term for doing what ought not to be done, and not doing what ought to be done out of zeal, desire, hate, delusion, fear. They are called bad ways because they are ways not to be traveled by noble ones. Cankers, asawa, as far as are change of lineage in the case of states of consciousness, as far as are in the alchemy of becoming, in the case of kinds of becoming, that is to say, the fourth immaterial state, there are exudations owing to the formed nature of object. This is a term for greed, for sense desire, greed for becoming, wrong view, ignorance, because of the exuding of these defilements from unguarded sense doors, like water from cracks in a pot, in the sense of constant trickling, or because of that producing the suffering of the round of the rebirth. The floods are so called in the sense sweeping away into ocean of becoming, and in the sense of being hard to cross. The bonds are so called because they do not allow disengagement from an object or disengagement from suffering. Both floods and bonds are terms for the cankers already mentioned. The hindrances are 5, namely lust, ill will, stiffness and torpor, agitation and worry and uncertainty, in the sense of obstructing the hindering the concealing reality from consciousness. Adherence, misapprehension, paramasa, is a term for wrong view because it occurs in the aspect of missing the individual essence of a given state and apprehending elsewise and unactual individual essence. The clinging are the 4, beginning with the sense desire clinging described in all the aspects of description of the dependent origination. The inherent tendencies are 7, namely greed for sense desires, etc., in the sense of invertebrateness, stated thus: the inherent tendency to greed for sense desire, inherent tendency to resentment, conceit, pride, false views, uncertainty, greed for become, and ignorance. For it is owing to their inveteracy that they are called inherent tendencies, since they inhere as a cause for arising of greed, of sense desire, etc., again and again. The stains are 3, namely greed, hate, and delusion. They are called because they are themselves dirty, like oil, black, and mud, and because they dirty other things. The unavoidable cause of action are 10, namely killing living beings, taking what is not given, sexual misconduct, false speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, gossip, covetousness, ill will, and wrong view. They are called since they are both unprofitable action, karma, and course that leads to unhappy destinies. The unprofitable thought arisings are the 12, consisting of the 8 rooted in greed, 2 rooted in hate, and 2 rooted in delusion. So, these 4 kinds of knowledge, each and severally abandon these states, beginning with the fetters. How? The five states eliminated by the first knowledge in the case of fetters, firstly, are false view of personality, doubt, adherence to rites and rituals, and then greed to sense desires, and resentment that is strong enough to lead to states of loss. The remaining gross greed for sense desires and resentment are eliminated by the second knowledge. Subtle greed for sense desire and resentment are eliminated by the third knowledge. The 5, beginning with the greed for the fine material, are only actually eliminated by fourth knowledge. In what follows, we shall not in every instance specify the fact that expression only actually, nevertheless, whatever we shall say is eliminated by one of the 3 higher knowledges should be understood as only the residual states are eliminated by the higher knowledge, for the state will already been rendered not conducive to states of loss of preceding knowledge. In the case of the defilements, false view and uncertainty are eliminated by the first knowledge. Hate is eliminated by the third knowledge. Greed, delusion, conceit, pride, mental stiffness, agitation, consciencelessness, and shamelessness are eliminated by the fourth knowledge. In the case of the wrongness, the wrong view, false speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood are eliminated by the first knowledge. Wrong thinking, wrong malicious speech, and wrong harsh speech are eliminated by the third knowledge. And here only the volition is to be understood as speech. Gossip, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration, wrong deliverance, wrong knowledge are eliminated by the fourth knowledge. In the case of worldly states, resentment is eliminated by the third knowledge. Approval is eliminated by fourth knowledge. Some say the approvals of fame and praise is eliminated by the fourth knowledge. The kinds of avarice is eliminated by the first knowledge only. In the case of perversion, the perversion of perception, consciousness, view, which find permanence in the impermanent, and self in the not self, and perversion in wrong view, finding pleasure in pain, beauty in the foul, are eliminated by the first knowledge. The perversion of perception and consciousness, finding beauty in the foul, are eliminated by the third path. Perversion of perception and conscientiousness, finding pleasure in the painful, are eliminated by the fourth knowledge. In the case of ties, the bodily ties of adherence of ties, rituals and rites and rituals of the insistent misinterpretation, this is the truth, are eliminated by the first knowledge. The bodily tie of ill will is eliminated by the third knowledge. Remaining one is eliminated by the fourth path. The bad ways are eliminated by the first knowledge only. In the case of the canker of view is eliminated by the first knowledge. Canker of sense desire is eliminated by the third knowledge. The other two are eliminated by the fourth knowledge. The same thing applies to the case of floods and the bonds. In the case of the hindrances, the hindrance of uncertainty is eliminated by first knowledge. The three, namely lust, ill will, and worry, are eliminated by the third knowledge. Stiffness and torpor and agitation are eliminated by the fourth knowledge. Adherence is eliminated by the first knowledge only. In the case of the clinging, since according to what it is given in the text, all worldly states are sense desire. That is sense desire as objects, and also so greed both for the fine material and immaterial falls under sense desire clinging. Consequently, that sense desire clinging to eliminated by fourth knowledge, the rest eliminated by the first knowledge. In the case of inherent tendencies, the inherent tendencies of false views and uncertainty are eliminated by the first knowledge. Inherent tendencies to greed, for sense desire, and to resentment are eliminated by the third knowledge. Inherent tendency to conceit, pride, to greed, or becoming, and to ignorance are eliminated the fourth knowledge. In the case of the stains, hate is eliminated by the third knowledge, others eliminated by the fourth knowledge. In the case of unprofitable courses of action, killing living beings, taking what is not giving, sexual misconduct, false speech, wrong livelihood, are eliminated by the first knowledge. The three, namely the malicious speech, harsh speech, ill will, are eliminated by the third knowledge. Gossip and covetousness are eliminated by the fourth knowledge. In the case of the unprofitable thought arising, the four associate with false views, and that associate the uncertainty, making five, are eliminated by the first knowledge. The two associate with the resentment are eliminated by the third knowledge. The rest are eliminated by the fourth knowledge. And that what is eliminated by any one of them is abandoned by it, and that is why it was said, so the four kinds of knowledge, each and severally abandon the states beginning with the fetters. The act of abandoning, but how then? Do these knowledge abandoning these states when they are past, or when they are future, or when they are present? What is the position here? For firstly, if they are said to abandon them when past or future, it follows that the effort is fruitless. Why? Because what has to abandon is non-existent, and then if it is when when they are present, it is likewise fruitless, because the things to be abandoned exist simultaneously with the effort, and it follows that there is development of the path that has defilement, or it follows that defilements are dissociate from the consciousness, though there is no such thing as present defilement dissociate from the consciousness. This is not one original argument, for in the text first, the question is put: when a man abandons defilement, does he abandon past defilements? Does he abandon future defilement? Does he abandon present defilement? Then the objection is put in this way: if he abandons past defilements, he destroys what has already been destroyed, causes to cease what has already ceased, causes to vanish what has already vanished, causes to subside that what has already subsided. What is the past which is non-existing, that he abandons? But this is denied in this way: he does not abandon the past defilements. Then the objection is put in this way: if he abandons future defilements, he abandons what has not been born, he abandons what has not been generated, he abandons what has not arisen, and he abandons what has not come to manifest. What is future, which is non-existent, that he abandons? But this is denied in this way: he does not abandon future defilements. Then the objection is put in this way: if he abandons present defilements, then though inflamed with greed, he abandons greed; though corrupted with hate, he abandons hate; though deluded, he abandons delusion; though shackled, he abandons conceit, pride; though misconceiving, he abandons false views; though distracted, he abandons agitation; though not having pride, though not having made up his mind, he abandons uncertainty; though having inveterate habits, he abandons inherent tendency. Dark and bright states occur coupled together. There is developmental path, that is defilement. But this is all denied in this way: he does not abandon past defilement, he does not abandon future defilement, he does not abandon present defilement. Finally, it is asked: then there is no path development, then there is no realization of fruition, there is no abandoning of defilement, there is no penetration of Dhamma, convergence of states. Then it is claimed: there is the path, there is path development, there is penetration to the Dhamma convergence states. When it is asked, in what way this is asked: suppose there was young tree with unborn fruit, a man cut it root, then unborn fruits of the tree would remain unborn and not come to be born, remain ingenerated and not come to be generated, remain unarisen and not come to arisen, remain unmanifest, and not come to be manifested. So too, arising is a cause, arising is a condition for the generation of defilements. Seeing the danger in defilements, consciousness enters into non-arising. With consciousness entering into non-arising, the defilement that would be generated with arising as their condition remain unborn and do not come to be born, remain unmanifest and do not come to be manifested. So with the cessation of the cause, there is the cessation of suffering. Occurrence is the cause, sign is the cause, accumulation is the cause, accumulation is a condition for the generation of defilement. Seeing danger of accumulation, consciousness enters into non-accumulation. With consciousness entering into non-accumulation, the defilement that would be generated with accumulation as their condition remain unborn and do not come to be reborn, remain unmanifest and do not come to be manifested. So with the cessation of the cause, there is cessation of suffering. So there is the path development, there is realization, fruition, there is abandoning of defilements, there is penetrating in the Dhamma. What does it show? It shows abandoning of defilements that have soil to grow in, but there are defilements that have soil to grow in, past, future and present. They are simply now described as arisen by having soil to grow in it. Now, there are various meanings of arisen, that is to say, arisen in actually occurring, arisen as being and being been and gone, arisen by opportunity made, and arising by having soil to grow in. Herein, all that is reckoned to possess three moments of arising, aging, that is presence, the dissolution is called arisen as actually occurring. 2. Profitable and unprofitable karma result, experienced as the stimulus of an object and cease reckoned as experience and gone, and also anything formed when it has reached the three instances beginning with arising and has ceased, reckoned, and been gone are called arisen and been and gone. 3. Karma described in the way beginning deeds that he did in the past, even when actuality past is called arisen by opportunity made, because it reaches presence in inhabiting other ripening karma and making that the opportunity for its own result, and karma result that has its opportunity made in this way, even when yet arisen, it is called arisen by opportunity made. 2, because it is sure to arise when an opportunity for it has been made in this way. While unprofitable karma is still unabolished in any way soil plain, it is called arisen by having soil to grow in. And here is the difference between the soil and what has soil should be understood. For soil plane means 5 aggregates in the 3 planes of becoming, which are the objects of insight. What has soil is an expression for defilements capable of arising with respect to those aggregates. Those defilements have that soil. That is why by having soil to grow in is said. Would you like to read a little bit? Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Ready. The last paragraph, I think.
Are we up to 83? So paragraph 83, bottom of page 805 of this edition. And that is not meant objectively, for defilements occupied with an object arise with respect to any aggregates, including past or future ones, as well as present, and also with respect to the subjectively fully understood. Hello. Is it good?
Yes.
Okay. And also with respect to the subjectively fully understood aggregates in someone else whose kankas are destroyed, like those that arose in the rich man's Suraya, with respect to the aggregates in Mahat Kachana, and in the Brahmin student Nanda with respect to Upalavana, and so on. And if that were what is called arisen by having soil to grow in, no one could abandon the route of becoming, because it would be unabandonable. But arisen by having soil to grow in should be understood subjectively with respect to the basis for them in oneself. For the defilements that are the root of the round are inherent in one's own aggregate, not fully understood by insight from the instant those aggregates arise. And that is what should be understood as arisen by having soil to grow in the sense of its being unabandoned. Now, when defilements are inherent, in the sense of being unabandoned, in someone's aggregates, it is only those aggregates of his that are the basis for those defilements, not aggregates belonging to another. And only past aggregates, not others, are basis for defilements that inhere unabandoned in past aggregates. Likewise, in the case of future aggregates and so on. Similarly too, only sense sphere aggregates, not others, are the basis for defilements that inhere and unabandoned in the sense sphere aggregates. Likewise in the case of the fine material and immaterial. But in the case of the stream enterer, etc., when a given defilement, which is a root of the round, has been abandoned by means of a given path in a given noble person's aggregates, then his aggregates are no longer called soil for such defilements, since they are no longer a basis for it. But in an ordinary man, in the defilements that are the root of the round are not abandoned at all, and so whatever karma he performs is always either profitable or unprofitable. So for him the round goes on revolving with karma and defilements as its condition. But while it is thus the root of the round, it cannot be said that it is only in his materiality aggregate, and not in his other aggregates beginning with feeling. That it is only in his consciousness aggregate, and not in his other aggregates beginning with materiality. Why? Because it is inherent in all 5 aggregates indiscriminately. How? Like the juice of humus, etc. in a tree. Humus, etc. in a tree. For when a great tree is growing on the earth's surface and supported by the essences of humus and water, and with that as its condition, increases its roots, trunk, branches, twigs, shoots, foliage, flowers, and fruit, till it fills the sky and continues the tree's lineage through the succession of the seed up to the end of the aeon, it cannot be said that the essence of humus, etc., are found only in its root and not in the trunk, etc., that they are only in the fruit and not in the root, etc. Why? Because they spread indiscriminately through the whole of it from the root onwards. But some men who felt revulsion for that same tree's flowers, fruits, etc., and might puncture it on four sides with the poison thorn called manduka thorn, and then the tree, being poisoned, would be no more able to prolong its continuity, since it would have become barren with the contamination of the essences of humus and water. So too the clansman who feels revulsion, dispassion, for the occurrence of aggregates, undertakes to develop the 4 paths in his own continuity, which is like the man's application of poison to the tree on all the 4 sides. Then the continuity of his aggregates is rendered incapable of prolonging the continuity to a subsequent becoming. It is now unproductive of future becoming, since all the kinds of karma, beginning with bodily karma, are now merely functional. For the effect of the 4 paths poison has entirely exterminated the defilements that are the root of the round. Being without clinging, he inevitably attains with the cessation of the last consciousness of the complete extinction of nibbana, like a fire with no more fuel. This is how the difference between the soil and what has soil should be understood. Besides these, there are 4 other ways of classing arisen, namely 5 arisen as happening, 6 arisen with apprehension of an object, 7 arisen through non-suppression, 8 arisen through non-abolition. Herein, 5 arisen as happening is the same as arisen as actually occurring. 6. When an object has at some previous time come into focus in the eye, etc., and defilement did not arise then but arose in full force later on simply because the object had been apprehended, then that defilement is called arisen with apprehension of an object. Like the defilement that arose in the elder Mahatissa after seeing the form of a person of the opposite sex while wandering for alms in the village of Kalyana. 7. As long as a defilement is not suppressed by either serenity or insight, though it may not have actually entered the conscious continuity, It is nevertheless called arisen through non-suppression because there is no cause to prevent its arising, if suitable conditions combine. 8. But even when they are suppressed by serenity or insight, they are still called arisen through non-abolition because the necessity for their arising has not been transcended unless they have been cut off by the path. Like the elder who had obtained the 8 attainments and the defilements that arose in him while he was going through the air, on his hearing the sound of a woman singing with a sweet voice as she was gathering flowers in the grove of the blossoming trees. And the 3 kinds, namely 6, arisen with apprehension of an object, 7, arisen through non-suppression, and 8, arisen through non-abolition, should be understood as included by 4, arisen by having soil to grow in. So as regards the kinds of arisen stated, the 4 kinds, namely 1 as actually occurring, 2 as been and gone, 3 by opportunity made, and 5 seems to skip 4. 5 as happening cannot be abandoned by any of these 4 kinds of knowledge because they cannot be eliminated by the paths. But the 4 kinds of arisen, namely 4 by having soil to grow in, 6 with apprehension of an object, 7 through non-suppression, and 8 through non-abolition, can all be abandoned because a given mundane or supra-mundane knowledge, when it arises, nullifies a given one of these modes of being arisen. So here, the kinds of states that ought to be abandoned, also the act of their abandoning, should be known in this way. The 4 functions. 6. Functions of full understanding and the rest, as stated when truths are penetrated to. 7. Each one of which ought to be recognized according to his individual essence. The 4 functions in a single moment. 6. Now at the times of penetrating to the truths, each one of the 4 path knowledges is said to exercise 4 functions in a single moment. These are full understanding, abandoning, realizing, and developing, and each one of them ought to be recognized according to its individual essence. For this it is said by the ancients, just as a lamp performs 4 functions simultaneously in a single moment, it burns up the wick, it dispels darkness, makes light appear, and uses up the oil, so too path knowledge penetrates the 4 truths simultaneously in a single moment. It penetrates to suffering by penetrating to it with a full understanding, penetrates to origin by penetrating to it with abandoning, penetrates to the path of penetrating to it with developing, and penetrates to cessation by penetrating to it with realizing. What is meant? By making cessation its object, it reaches, sees, and pierces the 4 truths. For this it is said, Bhikkhus, he who sees suffering sees also the origin of suffering, sees also the cessation of suffering, sees also the way leading to the cessation of suffering, etc. And so it should be understood for all the other 3 truths. And further it is said, the knowledge of one who possesses the path is knowledge of suffering, and it is the knowledge of the origin of suffering, and it is knowledge of the cessation of suffering, and it is knowledge of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. As the lamp burns the wick, so his path knowledge fully understands suffering. As the lamp dispels the darkness, so the knowledge abandons origin. As the lamp makes the light appear, so the knowledge as right view develops the path. In other words, the states consisting in right thinking, etc., by acting as connaissance, etc., for them. And as the lamp uses up the oil, so the knowledge realizes cessation, which brings defilements to an end. This is how the application of the simile should be understood. Another method. As the sun, when it rises, performs 4 functions simultaneously with its appearance, it illuminates visible objects, dispels darkness, causes light to be seen, and allays the cold, so too path knowledge penetrates to cessation by penetrating to it with realizing. And here also, as the sun illuminates visible objects, so path knowledge fully understands suffering. As the sun dispels darkness, so path knowledge abandons origin. As the sun causes light to be seen, so path knowledge as right view develops the other path factors by acting there as their connaissance condition, etc. As the sun allays cold, so path knowledge realizes the cessation, which is the tranquilizing of defilement. This is how the application of the simile should be understood. Another method. As a boat performs 4 functions simultaneously in a single moment, it leaves the hither shore, it cleaves the stream, it carries its cargo, and it approaches the furthest shore. So too path knowledge penetrates to cessation by penetrating to it with realizing. And here, as the boat leaves the hither shore, so path knowledge fully understands suffering. As the boat cleaves the stream, so path knowledge abandons origin. As the boat carries its cargo, so path knowledge develops the other path factors by acting as their connaissance condition, etc. As the boat approaches the further shore, so path knowledge realizes cessation, which is the further shore. This is how the application of the simile should be understood. So, when his knowledge occurs with the 4 functions in a single moment at the time of penetrating the 4 truths, then the 4 truths have a simple penetration in the sense of trueness, reality, in 16 ways, as it is said. How is there single penetration of the 4 truths in the sense of trueness? There is single penetration of the 4 truths in the sense of trueness in 16 aspects. Suffering has the meaning of oppressing, meaning of being formed, meaning of burning torment, meaning of change, as its meaning of trueness. Origin has the meaning of accumulation, meaning of source, meaning of bondage, meaning of impediment, as its meaning of trueness. Cessation has the meaning of escape, meaning of seclusion, meaning of being not formed, meaning of deathlessness, as it is meaning of trueness. The path has the meaning of outlet, meaning of cause, meaning of seeing, meaning of dominance, as its meaning of trueness. The 4 truths in these 16 ways are included as one. What is included as one is unity. Unity is penetrated by a single knowledge. Thus the 4 truths have a single penetration. Here it may be asked, since there are other meanings of suffering, etc., too, such as a disease, a tumour, etc., why then are only 4 mentioned for each? We answer that in this context, it is because of what is evident through seeing the other 3 truths in each case. Firstly, in the passage beginning herein, what is knowledge of suffering? It is the understanding, the act of understanding, that arises contingent upon suffering. Knowledge of the truths is presented as having a single truth as its object individually. But in the passage beginning bhikkhus, he who sees suffering sees also its origin, it is presented as accomplishing its function with respect to the other 3 truths simultaneously, with its making one of them as its object. As regards these 2 contexts, when, firstly, knowledge makes each truth its object singly, then, when suffering is made the object, suffering has the characteristic of oppressing as its individual essence, but its sense of being formed becomes evident through seeing origin, because that suffering is accumulated, formed, agglomerated by the origin, which has the characteristic of accumulating. Then the cooling path removes the burning of the defilements, and so suffering's sense of burning becomes evident through seeing the path. And as the beauties, sundaris, ugliness, did to the Venerable Nanda through seeing the celestial nymphs. But its sense of changing becomes evident through seeing cessation as not subject to change, which needs no explaining. Likewise, when origin is made the object, origin has the characteristic of accumulating as its individual essence, but its sense of source becomes evident through seeing suffering, just as the facts that unsuitable food as source of a sickness become evident through seeing how a sickness arises owing to such food. Its sense of bondage becomes evident through seeing cessation, which has no bonds, and its sense of impediment becomes evident through seeing the path, which is the outlet. Likewise, when cessation is made the object, cessation has the characteristic of an escape, but its sense of seclusion becomes evident through seeing origin as unsecluded. Its sense of being not formed becomes evident through seeing the path, for the path has never been seen by him before in the beginningless round of rebirths, and yet even that is formed since it has conditions, and so the unformedness of the conditionless becomes quite clear. But its sense of being deathless becomes evident through seeing suffering, for suffering is poison and nibbana is deathless. Likewise, when the path is made the object, the path has the characteristic of the outlet, but its sense of cause becomes evident through seeing origin. Thus, that is not the cause, but on the contrary, this is the cause for the attaining of nibbana. Its sense of seeing becomes evident through seeing cessation, as the eye's clearness becomes evident to one who sees very subtle visible objects and thinks, how clear my eye is. Its sense of dominance becomes evident through seeing suffering, just as the superiority of lordly people becomes evident through seeing wretched people afflicted with many diseases. So in that first context, 4 senses are stated for each truth, because in the case of each truth individually, one sense becomes evident as a specific characteristic, while the other 3 become evident through seeing the remaining 3 truths. At the path moment, however, all these senses are penetrated simultaneously by a single knowledge that has 4 functions with respect to suffering and the rest. But about those who would have it that the different truths are penetrated to separately, more is said in the Abhidhamma, in the Kathavatu. The 4 functions described separately. 7. Now as to those 4 functions beginning with full understanding, which were mentioned above. A. Full understanding is threefold. So too B, abandoning, and C, realizing, and D, 2 developings are reckoned. Thus should be known the exposition. A. Full understanding is threefold. That is, 1. Full understanding as the known. 2. Full understanding as investigating, judging. And 3. Full understanding as abandoning. A. 1. Herein, full understanding as the known is summarized thus. Understanding that is direct knowledge, is knowledge in the sense of the known. It is briefly stated thus. Whatever states are directly known are known. It is given in detail in the way beginning, because all is to be directly known. And what is all that is to be directly known? I is to be directly known. Its particular plane is the direct knowing of mentality, materiality with its conditions. 1. Full understanding as investigating, judging, is summarized thus. Understanding that is full understanding is knowledge in the sense of investigating, judging. It is briefly stated thus. Whatever states are fully understood are investigated, judged. It is given in detail in the way beginning, because all is to be fully understood. And what is all that is to be fully understood? The I is to be fully understood. Its particular plane starts with comprehension by groups, and occurring as investigating impermanence, suffering, not self. It extends as far as conformity. 3. Full understanding as abandoning is summarized thus. Understanding that is abandoning is knowledge in the sense of giving up. It is stated in the detail thus. Whatever states are abandoned are given up. It occurs in the way beginning. Through the contemplation of impermanence, he abandons the perception of permanence. Its plane extends from the contemplation of dissolution up to path knowledge. This is what is intended here. Or alternatively, full understanding as the known and full understanding as investigating have that third kind as their aim too, and whatever states a man abandons are certainly known and investigated, and so all 3 kinds of full understanding can be understood in this way, as the function of path knowledge. So B, so too abandoning. Abandoning is threefold too, like full understanding, that is, 1. Abandoning by suppressing, 2. Abandoning by substitution of opposites, and 3. Abandoning by cutting off. 1. Herein, when any of the mundane kinds of concentration suppresses opposing states such as the hindrances, that act of suppressing, which is like the pressing down of water weed by placing a porous pot on weed-filled water, is called abandoning by suppressing. But the suppression of only the hindrances is given in the text thus, and there is abandoning of the hindrances by suppression in one who develops the first jhana. However, that should be understood as so stated because of the obviousness of the suppression then. For even before and after the jhana, as well hindrances do not invade consciousness suddenly, but applied thought, etc., are suppressed only at the moment of actual absorption in the second jhana, etc. And so the suppression of the hindrances when it then is obvious. 2. But what is called abandoning by substitution of opposites is the abandoning of any given state that ought to be abandoned through the means of a particular factor of knowledge, which as a constituent of insight is opposed to it, like the abandoning of darkness at night through the means of a light. It is in fact the abandoning firstly of the false view of individuality through the means of delimitation of materiality, the abandoning of both the no-cause view and the fictitious cause view, and also of the stain of doubt through the means of discerning conditions, the abandoning of apprehension of a conglomeration as I and mine, through the means of comprehension by groups, the abandoning of perception of the path in what is not the path, through the means of the definition of what is the path and what is not the path, the abandoning of the annihilation view through the means of seeing rise, the abandoning of the eternity view through the means of seeing fall, the abandoning of the perception of non-terror in what is terror through the means of appearance as terror, the abandoning of the perception of enjoyment through the means of seeing danger, the abandoning of the perception of delight through means of the contemplation of dispassion, revulsion, the abandoning of lack of desire for deliverance through the means of desire for deliverance, the abandoning of non-reflection through the means of reflection, the abandoning of not looking on equably through the means of equanimity, the abandoning of apprehension contrary to the truth through the means of conformity. And also in the case of the 18 principal insights, the abandoning by substitution of opposites is 1. The abandoning of the perception of permanence through the means of the contemplation of impermanence. 2. Of the perception of pleasure through the means of the contemplation of pain. 3. Of the perception of self through the means of the contemplation of not self. 4. Of delight through the means of the contemplation of dispassion, revulsion. 5. Of greed through the means of the contemplation of fading away. 6. Of originating through the means of the contemplation of cessation. 7. Of grasping through the means of the contemplation of relinquishment. 8. Of the perception of compactness through the means of the contemplation of destruction. 9. Of accumulation through the means of the contemplation of fall. 10. Of the perception of lastingness through the means of the contemplation of change. 11. Through the sign through the means of the contemplation of the signless. 12. Of desire through the means of the contemplation of the desireless. 13. Of misinterpreting, insisting through the means of the contemplation of voidness. 14. Of misinterpreting, insisting due to grasping at a core through the means of insight into the states that is high understanding. 15. Of misinterpreting, insisting due to confusion through the means of correct knowledge and vision. 16. Of misinterpreting, insisting due to the reliance on formations through the means of the contemplation of danger in them. 17. Of non-reflection through the means of the contemplation of reflection. 18. Of misinterpreting, insisting due to bondage through the means of the contemplation of turning away. Herein, 1 to 7, the way in which the abandoning of the perception of permanence, etc., takes place through the means of the 7 contemplations, beginning with that of impermanence, has already been explained under the contemplation of dissolution. 8. Contemplation of destruction, however, is the knowledge in one who effects the resolution of the compact and so sees destruction as impermanent in the sense of destruction. Through the means of that knowledge, there comes to be the abandoning of the perception of compactness. 9. Contemplation of fall is stated thus: defining to be alike by inference from that same object, intentness on cessation. These are insight in the mark of fall. It is intentness on its cessation, in other words, on that same dissolution, after seeing dissolution of both seen and unseen formation by personal experience and by inference, respectively. Through the means of that contemplation, there comes to be the abandoning of accumulation. When a man sees with insight that the things for the sake of which I might accumulate karma are thus subject to fall, his consciousness no longer inclines to accumulation. 10. Contemplation of change is the act of seeing according to the material, septad, etc., how momentary occurrences in continuity take place differently by gradually diverging from any definition. Or it is the act of seeing change in the two aspects of the aging and the death of what is arisen. Through the means of that contemplation, the perception of lastingness is abandoned. 11. Contemplation of the signless is the same as contemplation of impermanence. Through its means, the sign of permanence is abandoned. 12. Contemplation of the desireless is the same as the contemplation of pain. Through its means, desire for pleasure and hope for pleasure is abandoned. 13. Contemplation of voidness is the same as the contemplation of not-self. Through its means, the misinterpreting, insisting that a self exists, is abandoned. 14. Insight into states that is higher understanding is stated thus. Having reflected on the object, dissolution he contemplates, appearance that is empty, this is insight of higher understanding. Insight so described occurs after knowing materiality, etc., as object, by seeing the dissolution both of that object and of the consciousness whose object it was, and by apprehending voidness through the dissolution in this way. Only formations break up. It is the death of formations. There is nothing else. Taking that insight as higher understanding and as insight with respect to states, it is called insight into states that is higher understanding. Through its means, misinterpreting, insisting due to grasping at a core is abandoned, because it has been clearly seen that there is no core of permanence and no core of self. 15. Correct knowledge and vision is the discernment of mentality, materiality with its conditions. Through its means, misinterpreting, insisting due to confusion that occurs in this way. Was I in the past, and in this way, the world was created by an overlord, are abandoned. 16. Contemplation of danger is knowledge seeing danger in all kinds of becoming, etc., which has arisen owing to appearance as terror. Through its means, misinterpreting, insisting due to reliance is abandoned, since he does not see any formation to be relied on for shelter. 17. Contemplation of reflection is the reflection that affects to the means to liberation. Through its means, non-reflection is abandoned. 18. Contemplation of turning away is equanimity about formations and conformity, for at that point his mind is said to retreat, retract, and recoil from the whole field of formations, as a water drop does on a lotus leaf that slopes a little. That is why, through its means, misinterpreting, insisting due to bondage is abandoned. The meaning is abandoning of the occurrence of defilement that consists in misinterpreting, defiled by the bondage of sense desires, and so on. Abandoning by substitution of opposites should be understood in detail in this way. But in the text it is stated in brief thus: abandoning of views by substitution of opposites comes about in one who develops concentration, partaking of penetration. The abandoning of the states beginning with the fetters by the noble path knowledge in such a way that they never occur again, like a tree struck by a thunderbolt, is called abandoning by cutting off. With reference to this, it is said, abandoning by cutting off comes about in one who develops the supramundane path that leads to the destruction of defilement. So of these three kinds of abandoning, it is only abandoning by cutting off that is intended here. But since that meditator's previous abandoning by suppression and by substitution by opposites have that third kind as their aim too, all three kinds of abandoning can therefore be understood in this way as the function of path knowledge. For when a man has gained an empire by killing off the opposing kings, what was done by him previous to that is also called done by the king. C. Realizing is divided into two as 1. Mundane realizing, and 2. Supramundane realizing, and it is threefold too, with the subdivision of the supramundane into 2 as seeing and developing. 1. Hearing, the touch, pasana of the first jhana, etc., as given in the way beginning, I am obtainer, a master of the first jhana. The first jhana has been realized by me, is called mundane realizing. Touch, pasana, is the touching, pusana, with the contact, pasa, of knowledge by personal experience. On arriving, and thus, this has been arrived at by me. With reference to this meaning, realization is summarized thus. Understanding that is realization is knowledge in the sense of touch. After which it is described thus: whatever states are realized are touched. Also those states which are not aroused in one's own continuity and are known through knowledge that depends on another are realized. For it is said, referring to that, bhikkhus, all should be realized. And what is all that should be realized? The I should be realized, and so on. And it is further said, one who sees materiality realizes it. One who sees feeling, perception, formations, consciousness realizes it. One who sees the I, etc., aging and death, realizes it. One who sees suffering, etc., one who sees nibbana, which merges in the deathless, in the sense of the end, realizes it. Whatever states are realized are touched. The seeing of nibbana at the moment of the first path is realizing as seeing. At the other path moments, it is realizing as developing, and it is attended as twofold here. So realizing of nibbana as seeing and as developing should be understood as a function of this knowledge. And two developings are reckoned, but developing is also reckoned as twofold, namely as one, mundane developing, and two, as supramundane developing. 1. Herein, the arousing of mundane virtue, concentration and understanding, and the influencing of the continuity by their means, is mundane developing. And 2, the arousing of supramundane virtue, concentration and understanding, and the influencing of the continuity by them is supramundane developing. Of these, it is the supramundane that is intended here. For this fourfold knowledge arouses supramundane virtue, etc., since it is their connaissance condition and it influences the continuity by their means. So it is only supramundane developing that is a function of it. Therefore, these are the functions of full understanding and the rest, as stated when truths are penetrated to, each one of which ought to be recognized according to its individual essence. Now, with reference to the stanza, when a wise man is well established in virtue, develops consciousness and understanding. It was said above, after he has perfected the 2 purifications that are the roots, then he can develop the 5 purifications that are the trunk. And at this point, the detailed exposition of the system for developing understanding in the proper way, as it has been handed down, is completed. So the question, how should it be developed, is now answered. The 22nd chapter, called The Description of Purification by Knowledge and Vision, in the treatise of the development of understanding in the path of purification, is composed for the purpose of gladdening good people.
Thank you, Jamila. We'll stop there, and we have the last chapter to go on. I think we'll do it next week. We may not do it here in person, but we'll still do online.
Only 20 pages.
Only 20 pages, yeah. So, thank you very much, everyone. So you can see the beautiful text is summing up, summarizing. So we do the dedication. Thank you. Om Vade Mere Meve Hovaga Dade Fo Benzanga Amnes Me Aile Bere Obirande Ojana Padore Zenede Erenda Mahayana Rije Vadeva Mere Daya Vagra Me Obe seconds levels to hold the Mayana Jiji Courage Manju Shinyuot as a man the Badra Deliwa following all the exam Aja de Dege Odimere Mede Exele Bodhijida Tebe Verana Yedans has been meeting freely with the generation. Thank you, everyone.